Welcome to Biztech's APAC Cybersecurity Show. Today, we take a look at the challenges faced by companies across the Asia-Pacific region, particularly with finding the right cybersecurity talent. Now, to share insights on this topic and to tell us more about the company, we've got Alvin Tan, Regional Vice President at Tanium. Tanium is a cybersecurity and systems management company that provides endpoint security and management solutions to organizations. Now, on that note, Alvin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Now, Alvin, for a start, what are some of the key factors contributing to the widening gap of cybersecurity talent in the Asia-Pacific region?
Well, I think over the last 3 years, when COVID hit, a lot of businesses had to pivot to digital in order to stay afloat, right? So one of the key parts about pivoting to digital is that they do need to protect their digital infrastructure. So as more companies come on board online, more talent is needed, and therefore we are very, very short of talent. Already we were very short before the pandemic.
And this is also driven partially by the fact that just cybersecurity not only has come up to the top level of awareness among C-suites, but also the fact that there's rising incidences on an exponential level in terms of growth, in terms of cybersecurity attacks across the world.
Yeah, that's the other side of the coin. When there's a downturn, right? So some industry recovered very quickly with digital, but some other industry could not recover. So when there's a downturn, a lot of these people are laid off and they tend to turn to cybercrime. One of the things that we found is that when there's a recession or when there's an economic downturn, people turn to cybercrime because a lot of the crime are cross-border, and the legislation in many countries do not allow them to chase criminals outside of their country. So it is actually quite a safe haven in some ways because of this gap, that people are able to kind of jump over to the bad side of cybersecurity.
And so, Alvin, one of the key things, and you've alluded to this, obviously, cybersecurity and cyber criminals have become a lot more organized, and it's an interjurisdictional challenge. How are companies like Tanium helping organizations protect themselves better?
Well, we think in order to protect yourself better, it starts with knowing what's going on in your organization. What we have found is that in many cases, right, you can Google stuff and you get back answers in seconds from Google. But if you ask yourself, how many endpoints do I have? Many organizations struggle to answer that question. When we probe a little bit further and we say, how long will it take for you to know how many endpoints you have? And they will say, well, probably I'll send some people out, after a month, they'll get back the answers. That's despite them already being pretty far along in the digitalization journey.
And so this is a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You can't protect what you do not know. And as a result, right, it starts with knowing. So how Tanium helps with that is that we do have this neighborhood watch concept where the neighbor will know whether you exist, and if you exist, then we should know that we need to protect you.
Okay, tell us more about that, this neighborhood watch concept.
Yeah, so when you set up your network and you issue laptops, let's say, to your employees to start working, a lot of times, right, there is a flux, the flux of assets that you own. It comes along with new employees joining, employees getting new equipment after being with the company for 3 or 5 years, old employees leaving, the old assets being decommissioned and maybe re-provisioned for new employees and so on. So there's always a flux of assets. So that's difficult to keep track of, and a lot of organizations struggle very, very badly. How Tanium sees it is that if I already exist, if Tanium is already installed in some of these endpoints, why not get these endpoints to look around and say, what's around in my neighborhood? And if there's a neighbor next to me, I should report it. And if I report it, after a while, you get to know that the asset exists. So frequently, when Tanium gets into an organization, we actually do find a good 12 to 20% of assets that the organization did not know about.
And that's quite an interesting thing. 20%, that's a lot. Now, this also comes, companies like Tanium also automate a lot of things, which then help to obviously alleviate the problem around the lack of cybersecurity professionals. Could you enlighten us about a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I always think that when you try to digitalize, there's a few plus points that comes out of it, right? When you digitalize, you do things that you can't humanly do. But at the same time, digitalization is a path to automation. And automation is a path to getting you to resilience. So if you can automate things, then it can move pretty fast. But I would say that automation comes with a feedback loop. You need to feedback that the job is done. I want to automate a job. You need the feedback that the job is done. And frequently, I think in many cybersecurity solutions that companies implement, they don't have that feedback loop. And then they struggle because they can't get the certainty that the job is done. So with Tanium, what we do is that we are able to communicate with a lot of endpoints in a very scalable and very speedy manner. And since we can communicate in that kind of speedy and scalable manner, we can always look back and say, is the job done? And if we know that it's done, that's certainty, right? It strikes it off your list of things to do. So we help companies with, maintaining compliance. We help companies with maintaining their patching much faster than the old ways of doing things. And we also share that data back to, so it's an operational task, but it's also a security need to know that the task is done. So we share that data, and there's a single source of truth across organizations that help them to keep their resilience in cybersecurity. Okay,
one of the parts of resilience in cybersecurity is also the point of your biggest vulnerability, people.
Yes.
And people are the very big part of the vulnerability. You can automate a lot, but if your people are not aware of how to protect the organization by the things that they do, you're going to create multiple vulnerabilities across various endpoints. What can companies do to upskill their employees on cybersecurity?
Okay, I'll answer that question and then I'll expand it a little bit further.
Okay.
So it used to be that when I talk to very large organizations, they used to say, Alvin, we'll just guard the perimeter. Because at the perimeter, the perpetrator must come in. And after that, if they're, internally, I trust my people, right? You would trust your employees. So if you trust your employees, one of the things that you must do in order to be able to trust your employees is to educate them, train them well. And there are solutions out there that, test them. You can train them with a normal syllabus, let's say, test them, make sure they pass. But at the same time, there are solutions out there that can test them on the fly, send them a phishing email, see if they catch it, for example. So there are solutions like that keeps the employees on the toes. So that's the people and whether you can train them and trust them. If you take that a little step further, in recent years, we found that, yes, you can trust your employee, but can you trust the devices that your employees use? And they are actually one and the same, right? To the IT, when you look at your IT infrastructure, the people and the device that they use, they're the same. They're actually the same. They carry the same identity because when the device comes in, you assume that the person comes in too. When they log in with the same user ID, right? So what Tanium does to help with that is that we also help to ensure posture of the device, that the posture passes what the organization wants before that device is allowed into the organization. And that's actually, in an industry term, that's a zero trust implementation. To trust nobody, to trust no one, and actually not to trust the device as well until they are verified to be clean. Yeah.
Now, given all of this, and again, we just talked about in a zero trust environment, the fact that the human element then and the vulnerability, the risk of that is reduced. How else is the industry transforming itself to really negate the impact of the widening gap in cybersecurity talent?
I think a lot of things needs to be back to the word automation, but also a lot of pipes need to be laid, a lot of roads need to be laid in order for you to react fast. So we always say, what can you do pre-attack? What can you do post-attack? So in pre-attack, you want to be as clean as possible. Cyber hygiene has been on the mouth, in the top of mind for many, many organizations. Considering that patching was a task that came about 20 years ago, yes. I got to say, we should do better than that, right? We should be able to do that. So, but patching is just one aspect of cyber hygiene. There's also the compliance, the hardening, maintaining all of that. So that's cyber hygiene, keeping your house clean. But post-attack, the question is how fast can you react? And I find that a lot of organizations, they do run exercises. The larger organizations, they run tabletop exercises to prepare the humans, to prepare the hierarchy on what they can do to respond fast. But on the IT side of things, like I said, right, you need to be able to react faster than that. In the last couple of years, to give an example, we saw Log4j as an example. Log4j was a library, and they say it's vulnerable. How fast did organizations take to react? Well, many of them burned their weekends for a good 3-4 months, I was told. And up to March, I was talking to large organizations that felt that they were not quite done yet. So that's a bit too slow in terms of responding to an incident or a potential incident. It's not yet an incident, but you know it's not clean. You got to go and patch them. How fast can you get it done? So Log4j was one. Print Nightmare, when Microsoft's print spooler had some vulnerability. All it took was to change a registry key to turn it off to save yourself. But how fast do organizations do it? Tanium can help them do it in minutes, actually. To change registry keys in minutes. We helped a large organization in the US mitigate WannaCry back in 2017. We mitigated about 800,000 endpoints in less than 1 hour. So that's how fast you need to be in order to be resilient.
It's been a fascinating conversation, Alvin. I've actually learned a lot. I'm also, as you can see from my face, thinking about a lot of the things that you've just mentioned. But before we leave, any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with?
Well, cybersecurity is a constantly evolving landscape. That's one of the key things about cybersecurity. So what we know about it 3 years ago probably has changed. Whether it changed a lot or changed a little, but it has changed for sure. By in 3 years it would have changed. And so for the people who are in the cybersecurity industry, there's a constant learning curve. I would say, right? You have to keep up to date. You have to keep learning. You have to keep on learning what is out there. Meanwhile, the hackers are in the dark. They are thinking about new ways. The latest new way I heard was about Booking.com, right? That they didn't just go to the hotel to hack the hotel. They hacked the booking portal of another company that basically does the ticketing for the hotel. And by doing that, they get to the end user and then they send phishing emails to those end users. So you think about it, wow, there are many ways, social engineering as well. When in Singapore, we hit many of the scams, it tends to be like that. A lot of social engineering as well.
Alvin, thank you very much for taking your time to be on the show.
Thanks very much, Brian, for having me.
Now, we've been speaking to Alvin Tan, the Regional Vice President at Tanium. This interview will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thanks a lot for tuning in.